economic ends. So there is no comparison.
So looking into the success of this organization, looking into the success of this organization, any other organization emulating this kind of?
No, no, no. That's why I said if I have only 1.5 hours and I wanted to explain to you how he manage all those vertices. You know, the whole idea of this case was to show that these are 8 levers which have been managed in a very coordinated manner. I have not come across any company in the world, and I believe that everyone can learn something from his annual report. If you do not have the patience to read those 50 annual reports, Dhananjay will give you a case that I have written which summarizes what I have discussed, if you're interested.
Yes, sir.
आप तैयार हो गया? Okay. Yeah. In case you want to contact me later, you can always do that. Okay. No, the point I am trying to do there is say how you can run a business in such a novel manner, you know. And in a perfectly legal, look at, you know, there is no, as I said, there is no conflict of interest between value creation and protection of stakeholder interest. Employees are there, shareholders are there, vendors are there, and he is the only one who has been arguing that US companies should not go abroad for saving taxes. He is the only person who has been arguing for the last 40 years. Please tax the rich more. He says, this is a strange country. I earn millions of dollars, but I am taxed at a lower rate than my employees. So, you know, we have this example of the Tata Group in this country, where J.N. Tata gave 50% of his wealth for charitable causes. His 2 sons, Ratan Tata and Durab Tata, gave their entire wealth. That is why the holding of Tata Sons vests with 2 major trusts. So this is the closest that we have come, where the founding family does not have anything in the trust. If you have a little time here, there is an institute close by, Indian Institute of Science. How many of you have been there? Please visit their campus and you will get an idea about what J.N. Tata has done. To my mind, that is the most prestigious institute of scientific learning in this part of the world. Founded by J.N. Tata. Okay. Yeah.
Myself, Ravi Kumar from Power Finance Corporation. On behalf of this whole group, I would like to thank you for taking your time and sharing your thoughts. And our mind has been overflooded with a lot of information. And like a sponge, we have absorbed it. We'll reflect on the various 8 levers that you have talked about. Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett is a legend. We'll look upon to him. Like the issues like EVA, which we are more, like I come from Power Finance, we are more focused on share price and how is it performing vis-a-vis our competitors. But we need to focus more on EVA, and we need to be more transparent with our reporting. Like in our case, NPAs is a big issue. And since we have RBI constraints and we have reporting requirements, many times we do a little bit of greening of our balance sheets. Another issue is like we have learned a lot about risk management in Infosys. And even we borrow around 10% from abroad. 90% of the borrowing is local borrowings, bonds and all. So when we, 7-8 years back, we decided to get into risk management for our forex borrowings. Although it is a small borrowing, but we found that our profits were being hit due to the losses, forex losses, which although were notional, then we have now evolved a risk management policy. Besides that, Warren Buffett exemplifies the true leadership, sir. Last 4 days, we have been talking about passion, how you need to be knowledgeable. But Warren Buffett, he invests in a whole range of industries, from lubricants to coke. I don't know how he manages to, I mean, it's very tough to just understand one industry and focus your knowledge, but truly. Another thing I've learned is that you need to have a good sounding board. Like he has Ajit Jain and another partner, Charlie. So who gives them perspective, the outside perspective, which we many times don't consider. And our, many times our strengths might be there, and the Charlie might have his own strengths. And besides that, how to get, you can be simple, humble, and still deliver by focusing on results, not focusing on market share or being the largest company, but focusing purely on profitability, returns. So that's a key takeaway. Now I would request Preetham Singh Saab to give a small token on our behalf to Prasanna Chandraji.
So this is on behalf of all. So friends, now we break for lunch. We'll have our lunch here and Shabu. Oh, sure, why not? Sir, can we have a group program?
Sure, sure.
So please come forward, sir.
Yeah.
We'll just take
Just take.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Know that it has been a wonderful, exciting, and very meaningful session. And some persons told me, those who are not the finance people, they said, well, I never thought finance can be so understandable and so simple. Yes, and I was talking with someone, those who are very wise people, they simplify complex issues. Non-wise fellows, they complexify simple issues. So I think that, and I think that you people are very lucky that he decided to come and all that. He has been too busy, you can imagine that. We have done some kind of restructuring about the program. Why? Because I think that they had some kind of, there was some communication gap that the program would be over by 1 o'clock. There was some kind of communication gap. So, to do that, you would be getting out from the hall at 5 o'clock. We shall make sure so that you have passport before you enter in the house. Okay? You can have passport for the children, but you must enter in the house, so you should have some passport. And I think they have also identified where you can buy saris, where you can buy some kind of gifts and those kind of things and all that. So 5 o'clock, Dhananjay, make sure that somebody should go along with them, and I think that you spend time there, okay?
We have to go all on our
Oh,
own, or
just, we'll talk about that, okay? एक बहुत बड़ी बात है, तुम लोग आए हो तो कुछ पैसा भी खर्च करो लगता है. When I take them to Europe and I take them to America, some people will be getting $500 to those who are from RBI fellows. But they would start caring about the penny, so I always say, लगता है इसी पैसे से धनवान बनने वाले हो तुम. Spend money, you know that. You guys are very lucky, general managers occupying high positions, so you spend money. That's number one. Number two, so we have done the restructuring of the program, depending upon, because some people have got the flight at 5 o'clock. So for 5 o'clock flight, you must get out from the hall by 3 o'clock, right? Luckily 3 o'clock would not be very crowded, okay? Because 5 o'clock is very crowded, roads are jammed. So virtually we have done, she is the president of National HRD network, should have been here, but because of his wife's some kind of problems, he couldn't come. So he would be doing some kind of Skype, something like that. So we shall begin 8 o'clock, and he will go from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, right? And I have cut down my timing, though I was supposed to take from 8 to 1 o'clock, so I will start at 9 o'clock and finish by 1 o'clock. And we have requested 1:30 or 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock we have requested Aswini, and he is very iconic figure actually in Bangalore, everyone knows about him. So he would be spending about an hour, so that maximum we would like to finish the program by 3:15. So you can get out from here 3:15, and I think that, but you must check out when you are coming from your room in the morning, you must be fully, your luggage must be packed so that you should get out by 11 o'clock from your room. But I would be suggesting when you are coming for the breakfast and when there is a tea break, at that time you go and bring down your luggage and keep somewhere, okay? So this is the program for tomorrow, and this has been done because of the, air flight scheduling issue, okay? So that's why tomorrow we are starting at 8 o'clock. And I know in public enterprises, many times you begin your day at 7 o'clock, so that's not too much, Okay, so we are starting tomorrow at 8 o'clock. So let's go for lunch now, okay? Which one? They would like to have photograph with you. No, no, उसको मैं बोलो नेगी को. Relaxed. Prasad, what about you? What? Comfortable. Srinath, soothing.
Rejuvenated soothing.
Acha, rejuvenated. Susila, huh? Relaxed. How you felt when you were being fun? Mhm. What? Say loudly, you know. हेमा जी क्लास है थोड़ा सा एनर्जेटिक हो तुम लोग ना. Fun.
Refreshing.
Amuthan?
Refreshing.
Refreshing.
Relax.
Relaxed. Das?
Good.
Good. Bhatia? Relaxed. Subrat say I don't want because Susila. Energized. Awakening and all that. I would like to make only one point. While you work for about 8 hours and 9 hours, you don't have time in your room even to relax or stand or even you do something like this. I always suggest that even you are doing very hard work, very serious, but I think that some kind of taking relaxation for 5 seconds, walking to the balcony, looking beyond window, that is extremely important. Because a relaxed mind is highly innovating mind. Agitating mind is a killing mind and killing whom? Killing self as well as others. How to relax? That's why how to relax. For example, that Dhananjay knows and Amrish also knows that nothing can disturb me for about an hour and 30 minutes in the morning. If I have got the class at 8 o'clock, I will start at 4 o'clock. But that is the one thing that whether I'm in China or America or anywhere, this is the one thing and that has kept me alive. Otherwise 20 days of traveling and very extensive traveling could have killed me. So how continuously you relax your mind, that is the one way. Okay? And that's why when I am in the house, I would be stroking her back and after lunch or dinner she would be stroking my back. Okay, so she tells me that at least for 5 minutes we are together. So you should do something. I think that Hema is in many ways, this HR guru or HR mentor or HR acharya. And when I say acharya means one, the one who teaches through acharan, through conduct, through action and through behavior. And when we were coming to Bangalore, and we were discussing who should be called from Bangalore, and we identified 2 persons. One has been Prasanna and second you are. Why? Because wherever she has gone or wherever she has worked, she has made the difference. Perhaps her motto was that I am here to make the difference. And that should be motto of all the leaders, that wherever you are, you should make the difference. After that, actually, when she laid down her office from Infosys, and whatever Infosys is today, and they all have been to Infosys.
I know. And Bosch, I think.
Bosch.
Both the companies
Yes.
I worked with.
So both they are the models. And I find one thing, that ultimately it's a culture that can't be imitated easily. And to build the culture of the company, the HR people plays very significant role. And you try to see all the global company, Fortune 500, those kind of things. Those who survive for a longer period, they survived through people power and the culture. Because that is the unique distinction of the company and that can't be easily imitated. So I thought that whom to call? Whom to call? So we called Rajiv Dubey from Mahindra and Hemaji, you from Bangalore. So Rajiv came, of course, from Bombay. So I think that, and I told Dhananjay, make sure that she comes, chase her. Okay, chase her like that. Okay, so can we give warm welcome to and Himaji to you now. Like to use a mic or
You don't mind, I'll take one of your this things. I think I prefer that. And I'll have this. Very good afternoon. You know, when I came for this program or thought about this program, I had two memories I wanted to share with you. I think it was the turn of the century, around 99, 2000, when Mr. Kamal Singh used to annually bring Professor Sumantra Ghoshal to Infosys for a program he managed with IMA at that time. And the same kind of visits would be made to a company. And one day they would spend at Infosys. And 2 or 3 times I had the privilege of hosting them. And what would happen is that they would observe the company the whole day, and they would then mull over it. And in the evening, we would be invited for cocktails and dinner. And we would be given a presentation of what they felt the company's strengths were and development needs were. So one year, we were doing it at the ITC, and we were in the room upstairs, and there was Mr. Murthy and me in that evening debrief. And one of the participants, this was in the year 2001 probably, or 2000 maybe, 2000, around when the dot-com bust had just happened, you know. And one of the participants turned around and said, you know what we noticed? One thing that we noticed is that as we walked around the whole campus with the leadership, showing them the campus as you would have seen the other day when you visited. We used to do that. Murthy used to walk with them, you know, everybody. Employees were not making eye contact with leadership. Okay? So we were, you know, we were on a high, very big high. We were investors' delight, customers' delight, had won the best employers, all of those kind of things. Of course, we were tightening the things and removing a lot of perquisites benefits to future-proof the company. But he said this perceptive comment that employees were not meeting our eye. And we kind of listened. Murthy said, you know, Hema, we must work on this. And believe you me, the employee satisfaction had started dipping dramatically because of many future-proofing initiatives we followed. And that year, in 2003, we fell off every best employer list. So we were an investor's delight, we were a customer's delight, but we had really done it at the benefit of the employee. And that comment which I got from this group has always stayed with me as a perceptive, proactive warning. So I'm really fond of these kind of programs which Kamal organizes, and therefore when Dhananjay and Kamal asked me, and like Preetham said, I just couldn't refuse. The second thing I remember, and this is to leadership development, was again at the turn of the century. In 1999, Infosys had just listed on NASDAQ. And we had then said that we want to benchmark ourselves with global firms. And how do we do that? So we said, let's try for the Malcolm Baldrige Award. You know, of course, now there's CII, Exim, etc. But we wanted to do the Baldrige Award. So we had Baldrige assessors come and assess us as a company. And they looked at it in various forms, you know. So they looked at leadership, they looked at customer satisfaction, strategy, knowledge management, all of that. And we thought we would really get a high score in all of this because we were doing very well, stocks were doing excellently, etc. But we had a very perceptive advance warning again when the assessors told us that everything is going right. Your strategy is robust, your customers are delighted, your KM framework is small, but you need to beef up your leadership development. That's the one thing that they gave us a feedback on. And they said we needed to have a formal leadership development to propel growth. Define and deploy a system, and then develop, mandate, and institutionalize leadership training for all levels of training. And when they did this, they gave the direct responsibility of doing this to the CEO and MD. At that time, it was the chairman and MD. So Mr. Murthy was given this mandate. So it was actually a development need for him. And in Infosys at that time, of course, as many times, he was God, right? So we were all quite aghast that the MD had got a development need. But they said, if you don't have a strong, robust leadership development plan, the Baldrige Award will never go to a company which doesn't have it. And I think that's when the Infosys leadership development journey started. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this, and maybe you had a presentation yesterday when you were, or whenever you were there. There's a book by Matt Barney, who subsequently became one of our leadership development directors about the Infosys journey. But at that time, Infosys then decided to create a leadership development system. We invited a gentleman called Dr. G.K. Jairam. He was the first chairman of Infosys, who had left way back in 83, 84. And he had joined Arthur D. Little. He was a big consultant. He was about in his early 60s, but we said, will you come back and set this up for us? A tremendous thought leader. And he crafted what was called the Infosys 9-pillar concept of leadership development, which was really based on the 360-degree feedback, on developmental assignments, on culture workshops, on developmental relationships, coaching and mentoring, on leadership skills development, on feedback intensive programs, kind of the PGL types, systems, process and learning, because that is the heart of the whole strategy of growth for Infosys, community empathy, and finally, of course, learning on the job, which was action learning. So this was my personal experience on this whole leadership development journey that formally started in 1999. So I wanted to share these two things with you. One, how Kamal and Sumantra used to come early, and the same type of program and how it gave us value. And the second, of course, is our own belief on leadership development. So if we look at really what the top CEOs are saying, and repeatedly in 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, this is the Conference Board survey, they're again and again and again saying that what keeps them awake at night is talent, human capital, and innovation. It's figuring in the top 5 definitely, even probably in the top 3 in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. So leaders are saying this. And if you deep dive into the human capital challenge, what is this human capital challenge that they're talking about? And again, from the Conference Board survey, they're saying it's the failure to attract and retain top talent. And many of you are from the public sector. Some of you are not. But you all know, in whichever sector you are, that the brightest guys are being eyed on. I know from NTPC, for example, how the energy sector handpicked and took so many people away. So attracting and retaining top talent. And attraction, of course, for many of you, it's probably at the campus stage where you get really the best talent. But how do you really attract them when all the startups and all these kind of things are today there? Developing next generation leaders, which is what? So leadership development is really the top challenge that's keeping CEOs awake. And of course, then slowing economic growth in emerging markets, new competitors globally, etc., etc., etc. McKinsey did a similar survey, and they did 500 plus organizations, and they found that leadership development is coming again in the top 3 current and future priorities and challenges for CEOs. But interestingly, what they also found, that while it is coming as a challenge, whether it's in UK, whether it's in the US, whether it's in India, leaders are saying, while it is a challenge, we are not able to develop leaders. And that's what I really wanted to talk to you on, saying, why are leadership development programs faltering? You know, I know, leaders know, CEOs know, consultants know, advisors know, all of us know that leadership development is critical. Then why are they failing? What are the challenges? And I think that's the key thing that I want to speak to you from my personal experience. The first, I believe, is when leadership development is only in letter and not in spirit. So you have a great building, you have great classrooms, you may even have great programs listed, but finally, the organization has not absorbed this into the DNA. And what I believe is critical for organizations to really absorb this into the DNA is that the senior most leaders in the organization must own the mandate of leadership development. And I cannot thank those consultants of Baldrige at that time enough for having said that developing this leadership development system and framework must be the responsibility of none other than the chairman and MD of the company. Because it's very easy to bury this somewhere in HR. So you should, those days I used to report to a gentleman called Mr. N.S. Raghavan, who's a very unsung hero of Infosys, but he's a very big thought leader in people development. He was the joint MD. In fact, he stepped aside to allow Nandan to become the MD because he was more senior than Nandan. And he knew that Nandan had the runway. So after Murthy Nandan, actually technically Raghavan was joint MD and he was in charge of HR. So Murthy, then there was Raghavan, then there was me. So if it had been put in HR, they would have been under me. So it would have been 4 levels down from the CMD. And you know how the difference when it reports to the CMD was. So I think one of the most important things I find is that it is adopted only in letter and not in spirit. And when that happens, so we have a leadership development program, we have faculty, we have organization, we have infrastructure, but it is not. The second thing is that I think leaders at the highest level need to be personally involved in the selection and deselection of the pool that goes to become the leadership pool. So again, it cannot be. It has to be a process which is anchored right at the top. If you're saying, those days, if you're saying, say, 1% of your top, we had a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. So we were about 30,000 employees at that time. So 30 employees were in our tier 1, about 90 were in our tier 2, and about 270 odd were in our tier 3. And these 3 tiers were selected almost personally by the senior most leadership in the company. And then when you review and see who's up to the mark and who's not, you should equally delist people. It cannot be that I've got into the pool, now I rest in peace. That also has to be, and only then will leadership development be in letter and not in spirit. And this is one of the first reasons I think programs don't succeed and deliver the results that they're supposed to. The second is that such programs are done very beautifully when everything is rosy and hunky-dory. But when the budgets become tight, when your belts have to be tightened, the first line of fire is the leadership development program. And I know it is tough, but it is not a nice to do. It has to be defined as a must do. And I'm again personally telling this from my own example because we started this in 2000. Our first leadership development workshop was held in Waldorf Astoria, New York, nowhere less. So we all flew there, etc. And then you know what happened in 2001? The software industry from its heady growth of, suddenly we said only 30% growth. Shares tanked. Devang Mehta, who was the NASSCOM head, I don't know how many of you remember him, he was found dead, unfortunately suicide or dead suddenly in Australia. And we had the September 11 attacks. US just went into a shutdown, and the economy was so tightly, this thing with US that the whole industry went into a tailspin. And we had identified programs, we had identified coaches, we've identified Ivy League colleges, all of that for our top leaders, but the money was required. So there is always, and this is not just Infosys, I'm saying company after company after company I've seen, that when there is tough times, it becomes a dreaded, easiest thing to cut. So my recommendation here is that you will have to tighten your belts. It's foolish thinking to say that this program will go as if nothing is happening and the rest of the whole company will be struggling in sackcloth and ashes. But you can make changes. You can bring in strong leaders from within to be your faculty. You can bring in strong leaders from within to do the research that is required to drive a program like this. You can identify workshop venues well within your own campuses instead of going to lofty hotels and do it. You can identify action learning projects which are actually very, very easily managed, which are required in those tough times. And that's a fantastic learning ground for people. But the intent must be there to keep the program running at these times and not bury, because this is the time when you can really train people on some of the crisis issues and never waste that opportunity. So I know there is a tendency that iska budget cut kar do, but don't do that, because I think that is the biggest reason. Because then, we're dealing in hope, we're dealing in employees, we're dealing in people who have gone through 360, identified a training program, a developmental intervention, and suddenly you're saying it's going to go into cold storage. And next time when you bring that program back, you know how cynical they will be. So I think this is the second reason leadership developments really fail. The third, and this has given me a lot of heartburn and sorrow, honestly. I have time and again seen very visionary CEOs and MDs starting off a program of leadership development. For some reason or the other, that CEO or MD had to step out. In one case, I know, there was an acquisition. And in the acquisition, though this entity was the larger entity, the smaller entity acquired with private equity leverage. And the CEO changed. And the program was just given a quiet burial. And I'm just saying one, and you all know in the public sector, CEOs change, MDs change. Somebody's child, somebody's passion this is, the next CEO comes and it just gets buried. Yeah, I'm sure. Not just in PSUs, let me tell you. It's everywhere, and the example I said is a private sector one. So I feel this is also because of the lack of the first, that it is not within the DNA of the organization. And you know why? One reason I really believe that it could survive, I'm not 100% sure, is if you explain to the system, so to say, why leadership development is critical. Another organization I'm seeing, very robust, very strong leaders. In the next 4 years, all the C-suite executives will change. The whole culture of the company is going to change. Now, if you have a strong thought leader who's able to explain to the organization and the new people, so every CEO wants to put a stamp on some initiative like this because it's a mandate of the CEO, right? Leadership is right up there. But if you can ensure that this particular initiative seamlessly moves with some tweaking from a new CEO's perspective, it's a great reason for it to survive. But usually it's given a quiet burial. And after some time, it may come back in another form, old wine in a new bottle, but the burial that has happened makes people who are participating very cynical. And you start off, you convert the leaders, you say you have to participate, then it goes away, then you know how tough it is to bring them back into the space. So this is the third reason that I feel leadership programs, and therefore you need a very, very strong belief system in the organization that believes that is this. We don't explain enough the why we are doing a program. The why of the program is so, so critical. And I think, while the CEO may be the owner, the custodian is definitely the leadership development or the HR division. And I think I would lay the blame a little bit there as well, not a little bit, quite a bit. Because as a profession, and somebody is a finance professional here, right? So as a profession, HR is very, very good in explaining what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. But we are rather weak in why it needs to be done. Whether it's a compensation cut, whether it's an incentive program change, the why of the program we have to explain, and that's the thing. So my solution to this is that we have to, why are we doing this? What will happen if we don't have a leadership development? Where are the failures that have happened? How many outsiders did we have to bring in? Things like that. So the why of the program has to be very strongly defined, so strongly that leadership change is not able to actually touch it. Initiative is great, but the target audience is wrong. I'm finding another organization. They've done a lot of hard work. They've done all the competency redefinition. They've identified the gap assessment. But the guys they are targeting for leadership development are going to retire in the next 2 years. Why? Because how do I tell the senior guy he's not part of the pool? This is a very genuine problem. And group that really needs this headspace for growth doesn't get the real important programs. But it is very important in somebody else's biodata. And we are too good, or we have the affiliation motive too high, that we don't tell them, boss, this is not for you. Are you with me here? So there are 30 seats for this Ivy League program. If 25 are filled by people who are going to retire in the next 24 months, because he's the senior most guy, he has to go and he's going, then where's the target audience? Who did you intend it for? Somebody has to take the hard truth here. So I found an organization, what they did, they made some of these people very respected, and with no insultment, they made them fellows. They said, you're already fellows. So you have to mentor this program. You're not in the pool, but you are. So they were respected, they were treated well, they were allowed, but they were not part of the mainstream. So you have to find your own ways. But the biggest mistake we make is that this becomes a perquisite without being a requisite. Again, what happens? The real person who needs it, you're watering the area which is like Cherrapunji. So you know what I mean by this. So this is another big issue. And actually, when this happens, you could actually end up with really a huge amount of cynicism about this program. The next is you focus on the wrong areas for leadership development. Now, I have again and again seen, and this I think is a trap most companies fall into. You define a competency framework. You already have something. Now, I'm doing this for one of the companies that I currently advise. And we've created a small subgroup of board members plus senior leadership to actually review the competencies that are existing in the organization. And we've trained the lens on these competencies pretty dramatically. And while we found that the competencies were very suitable for the current state of the organization, in the VUCA world, which we are all talking about, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, whatever it is, these competencies will not be enough for organizations to survive. So if the competencies that were already identified and the ones that are successful for the organization today are the competencies against which we will do leadership development in the future, those leaders will have only a subset of the competencies that are required to actually develop them in the future. So, you must be cognizant of, just like we say potential appraisal, a potential appraisal of the situation that the organization is likely to face, the competencies that will be required in that kind of context, and then develop that. The other thing I have found very useful is that practical leadership programs break leadership into different types. So you look at competencies as a general management leadership competencies, but there are different competencies for crisis management. There are different competencies in an acquisition integration scenario. There are different competencies for operational leadership. There are different competencies for functional leadership. So as sharply as you can define this set of competencies, and then look at your potential pool and say, hey, he or she is going to fill A, B, C roles. For example, if you take a senior leader and send him to put a stake in a new geography you're entering into, say sub-Saharan Africa, what are the competencies that that person will need for that versus in a growth market versus in an existing market could be different. And if you're able to sharply define these subsets of competencies and then map your leadership pool who you have identified for these, you may have a drop-dead successor, 3 to 5 years ready successor, 5 to 7 years successor, 10 years plus successor, it has more of a chance of working. So it is important to focus on areas of leadership development, on types of leadership requirement, and times of leadership requirement. I think this is one of the biggest challenges. And if you don't do this, it's one size fits all. And one size, unfortunately, doesn't fit all. And this is something, if you can invest in the competency development time, rather than jump into leadership development, in getting the right competencies that are required for different types of roles and different types of times, it'll go a long way in actually doing. Because otherwise, you're running behind a wrong problem. This I have found very, 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 very important. So, you have a great leadership development program. You've done your 360 degrees. You've identified, of course, you've got all senior leaders involved. You've identified the pool of leaders. You've identified the competencies. You've identified the kind of competencies for different times and roles. You've also identified the kind of behaviors and traits that you need to get into your 360. So you did all that. You've got the gaps. You've sat. Now, who is helping this individual take these gaps and make it into a development plan? I do quite a little bit of coaching nowadays. And increasingly I find when I'm assigned to a coachee, he or she is sharing with me a lot of the instruments and methods that have been deployed on him or her, behavioral event interview feedback, 360-degree feedback, some of the other feedbacks, all of those various tools and all that stuff. And we're looking at all of it. But who has helped him or her put method into all this data? Because you can't be like Superman developing all the traits. So where is a subordinate's feedback critical? Where is the peer feedback critical? Is it in collaboration? Would you then be looking more sharply at the collaboration scores that peers have given you? Would you be looking at the ability to articulate and communicate the vision of the organization more sharply from the subordinates? Would you be looking at the strategic mindset that the person deploys from the boss? And then how do you put this together? So I think leadership development programs need to have a very strong program management where the boss, the individual who's going through the leadership development, and somebody assigned from the leadership development team program manages this for each individual identified, and therefore at a larger level in the organization. I found one organization which had a beautiful theme. So they had the director, and they had 8 or 9 clear leaders who became what's called leadership counselors. And these counselors were assigned to 5 or 7 or 9 potential leaders from the pool. And they help them design their IDPs. See, the IDP design is very, very critical. That is the individual development plan, because that's at the heart of the whole leadership development journey. And the IDP is something like, if you don't know the IDP, have you heard of the Johari window? So it's a blind area if you don't know your IDP. And the moment you know your IDP, your blind area reduces, your arena improves, or at least those which are known to you. It may be hidden, but known to you improves. Knowledge is half the battle won. I know I don't take unpleasant decisions in time. If I don't know that, but if I know that, at least I know this is the problem. And knowing the problem is half the. So you need to help people to put together the feedback, and that's what I mean by program management. Similarly, identifying programs. So say there was a great program on, say there was a program on human resource management. I've been allowed to go somewhere to an Ivy college. Now, I have an affinity to Harvard, so I want to go to Harvard. But does Harvard have the best human development program? Or is it Michigan? Or is it Booth? Now, this is all part of the whole program management initiative, which somebody should anchor. And if it is not, it'll be good money running behind bad causes. And it can trip the whole program. You have to integrate this into real work. And I think this is where action learning really comes into play. So, I don't know whether, if you can have programs where areas identified are really mapped into projects and challenges, and then you bring that back, I think it's very good. Also, it's a culture. Many times, we have all survived. We have all succeeded. We have grown. We know we are not Superman. We know we have gaps. But we don't want to know our gaps. So I think if you really want IDPs to succeed and leadership development programs to succeed, the system has to help build emotional courage in participants. Emotional courage in participants to be able to identify their weaknesses and face up to them. And if I'm being told that strategic orientation is not my strength, but I'm leading an initiative, I think I'm strategic. In fact, another company I know, they have a very interesting thing. They have four dimensions: strategy versus ops, empathy versus something else, like that, 4 dimensions. Relationship versus task. And everybody has to do a test when they join, and they are given something on this number. So in their telephone directory, online telephone directory, against the number, it will read my score. So if I'm picking up the phone to speak to you, when I look at your directory, I will know you are a 5342, which means you're 5 on strategy, say you're 3 on relationships, you're 2 on something else, and you're 4 on something. And I may be a 2435. So I know from my perspective, I'm speaking to somebody who's quite, it's like the Myers-Briggs in some sense, the MBTI, INTJ, ENTJ. But they have publicized this, and publicized it to such an extent, it's on everybody's telephone directory. Okay? So it's transparent. Now, if I'm a strategic leader, but my strategy is sitting at 2, whereas normally all my peers are sitting at 5, it is going to sometimes be a little uncomfortable to me. But they reinforce the message by saying, in the strategic team, we want people with complementarity. And if you are low in that, don't worry, lean on somebody else to get that. And you can get a perception of it, but we want you here very much, because you're here for tasks. But look at how they have put it out there in the real learning. And every day when I can dial somebody or not, I'm seeing the other person's score and my own score. And giving people the courage to go out there and participate. So you can do, I'm a big believer that culture will change if you have processes and systems. If you want a culture where everybody turns out, if you're a consulting organization, and sends their weekly activity report at the end of the week, Have a culture whereby if you don't get your weekly activity reporting, you don't get your salary in. People will send in their weekly activity report. Unfortunate, but behaviors and processes and systems can really change culture and the way organizations. You know, McKinsey, for example, they have a very strong knowledge management framework. Now, did that knowledge management framework just spring up like that? It sprang up because they measure how many in your team contributed to the KM. They measure how much you leverage the KM. And they also measure then when somebody put out a question wanting to say, send in a proposal for something in some place, how much you collaborated and contributed to that proposal creation. And that comes in your performance appraisal. Automatically, won't it create a robust KM framework? So processes and systems will create values, but we need to build that in. And then I think you have to articulate, demonstrate, and reinforce. The worst thing is you have a very strong leader developed, little headspace, he'll need some amount of mentoring to be able to do the job, but at the last minute, you go out and hire somebody else. So external hire comes in. It's almost like all dressed up, but nowhere to go. So you have to articulate, you have to demonstrate, and you have to reinforce. And I believe here metrics are critical. So if you have a leadership development program in phase, you have to have a method by which you measure how many external people were actually brought in for critical roles, which should have come through internal leadership development. And I have one more reason why they fail, and I want to share that with you, and that I think is the most critical. That is, if you anchor leadership development initiative with somebody who's not a thought leader, who is not able to explain the why of such programs, who is not able to explain where it succeeded and where it failed. I've seen the most success, many reputed companies taking somebody who's not a thought leader in this field, but anchoring leadership development with them. It becomes a power symbol. The leadership development initiative should be anchored with somebody who's a real thought leader in the space of leadership development, who's a giant in that field, who can take on senior leadership when they are not doing the program well, challenge them, and force them to do it. And that will only come from intellectual superiority. If leadership programs are anchored with people who are managing it more from an administration mode, and which is why, Ramcharan was here last week for the NHRD, and his pet theme now is that HRD and HRA must be separate, which is human resources development must be distinct from human resources administration or management. And he feels too many HRD folks are just doing human resources administration and not the development. So I mean, you really need a development giant. And if you give it, and I think the kickstart we had was we brought in Dr. Jairam. He had the intellectual superiority to challenge at every level, including, of course, Mr. Murthy at that time. Because leaders from the corner office, you get a lot of subtle messages which can make or break the program. So I think you really need a really tremendous thought leader to lead it. And if we do all of this, program will sustain. But if you look at programs which are start, stop, or in letter but not in spirit, my hunch is that the problems will lie somewhere on this slide. So, I like the statement by Vince Lombardi. He says, leaders are made, they are not born. They are made by hard effort, which is the price which all of us must pay to achieve a goal that is worthwhile. So it is not serendipity. It is not a nice to do thing. It is not something that comes easily. It requires hard work, it requires thought leadership, it requires commitment, it requires the context, it requires reviewing and measuring, and developing courage in those people who finally have to go through the leadership. Thank you. I'm open to questions. I think with all that stroking, everybody has really gone to sleep. I'm sorry.
Many things would have been spoken, and it's maybe so. Having such a robust process at Infosys and other things, how Vishal Sikka introduction there would have gone? I don't know. It would have, because every leadership succession has its own consequences.
What I say is, I'm not saying Infosys. So if you looked at all the 9 things, somewhere along the way, probably it became by letter and not spirit. Somewhere along the way, probably it became by prerogative, not by merit. And I think some of these are good interventions, and for example, it carries on, but I believe that a great program anchors right at the top. So I know Praveen, for example, as the CEO, is very strongly anchoring it, and then HR. But when it is anchored at the MD level, it gets a lot of preeminence. And another thing is leadership development must happen at all levels.
So what actually she is saying, that we have got the rituals, but we don't ask a question, why this ritual? That's why the point which she made, ask question, why? And the last point which is, this is what actually, the Saptarishi and both have been talking about. Are you committed? Or since others are doing it, you imitate? So the question is, everyone knows about it. Knowing is one thing, but committing for doing is another thing. So commitment is important. Otherwise, you find that it doesn't work in real life.
And taking that same question forward, so let's look at the MD's role, but let's look at the presidents, let's look at the CEOs. All of them bubbled up from the process. And if I look at people like, I don't know whether you've heard of Sandeep Dadlani, etc., bright youngsters who were well steeped into the system, down the system, but they have been picked up, and in the course of 5 to 7 years have become presidents. So that ability happened. Now, at some levels, you may still end up. But again, it had a system by which there was a lot of internal talent bubbling up until such time maybe that you needed some external talent to handle. But the ability to be able to do this at different levels, I think that was a plus. But when leadership development heads change, what Dr. Singh said, you must think of that. Does he or she have the credibility to lead that initiative? Because it can.
No, remember that we said, those persons who have failed in lines, you send them as trainers. This is the reality of most of the companies in India. So she made a very powerful statement. Those who are the thought leaders in terms of thinking and action, those could be also role models, come and stand, then they have got the credibility, people listen to them. Otherwise, the person who is highly demotivated, he gives the lecture on motivation. So that's why thought leaders has been using always thought leader. And I would also like to say, thought leaders and action leaders, if they are combined both, they become the role models.
So, and I'm again going back to the Infosys example, which was again picked up from a lot of studies across various leadership development institutions. So the message, and I'm sure, when Krish spoke to you or somebody would have said this, The feedback, the coined term that we coined was, the company is the campus, the company is the campus, the business is the curriculum, and leaders must teach. And that marries the two. So if you have leadership development led by a thought leader, and leadership development taught by an action leader, what a beautiful marriage. So for example, strategy, we believed. The kingpin in our organization at that time was Nandan Nilekani. And if you look at his success story subsequently as well, his is a path-breaking career path. Many leaders would like to emulate. So you did this, then he became CEO, he became MD, then he became vice chairman, then he went to UID, then. So parallelly when he was doing this, he was also doing something else. He was doing the Bangalore Agenda Task Force, for those of you who are in Bangalore. He was anchoring the Jawaharlal Nehru Urban Renewal Mission. He was our thought leader at the World Economic Forum for Imagining India. He created that thing, The World is Flat. He wrote a book. Then he did the UID and Aadhaar. And of course, now he's helping on the other. So it's a very path-breaking career path. So we always said he was ultimate in strategy. So he used to lead the strategy sessions for leaders. But now, let me tell you, he's busy getting customers, managing the financials, looking at something. How can he sit and design the program? So we had thought leaders in the leadership development school who brought together all the concepts, the theories, etc. for him. And then he would say, tell me how IBM did this. Tell me how Accenture did this. Tell me how somebody else did. So case studies were also created. Then he imbibes that. He looks at his learning. There is the knowledge part. So the partnership is very strong between the leadership development faculty and him to deliver this program through a case study and experiential workshop to the top leaders. That is the complementarity.
What actually she's saying that when Rajiv Gandhi was alive and we were doing the program for the ministers in the staff college, I gave one idea that those persons who are going to Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, they should be interviewed, they should be selected. And once they go there, they would be getting about 50% incentive money. Incentive? So, incentive money. Yeah. Means what? I am picking up the best people to train. Please remember that one thing, that in public enterprises and most of the places which I have seen, whom you are picking up as a trainer, guru, thought leader. Because they become the guru, they become the acharya. So that's why whom you are picking up, that's very, very important question. That's what really you have to think. But normally, and once Rajiv Gandhi went, what actually she was saying that, and VP Singh came and I met him, he said, I don't believe in these kind of things. Dr. Singh, you don't know much about the bureaucracy, I know about the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy will run like that. So how to perpetuate the culture, how to perpetuate the whole human development thinking, that's important.
And in companies that are built to sustain, built to last, these things are there. And there are enough case studies and these things, you study it, you'll understand. But it causes, it's a real tough thing. I know, after Dr. Jairam stepped off, we had a change in leadership. And it went into a lull. And then it had to come back again. Then we got another big business leader to lead it. I don't have a problem with different leaders leading it because they leave their own individual stamp on it. The question is, they should be stamping on it. I mean, they should not stamp on it. They should put the stamp on it, so to say. And that's the challenge.
But read two books actually which Hema is talking about, Built to Last and How the Mighty Fall. If you want to grow as a leader, these two books should be Bible and Gita for you. How the Mighty Fall and Built to Last. Read both. And you will get tremendous amount of insight what she has been talking about that.
And this emotional courage, I think that's very critical. I used to hate it, I must tell you. But Murthy used to insist. I come for this feedback session which Kamal and Professor Ghoshal used to lead. And Mr. Ghoshal used to really chubby everybody and tell us all the bad things. And Murthy would be looking only at me and saying, Hema, we have to improve this. But you have to have the courage. That guy saw that they were not making eye contact with us, which, like the frog in the boiling water, till it really boils, you're not able to jump. We weren't seeing. And I must tell you, in 2003, from being the darling of all the best employer awards, we fell like everything. Because we had, tightened, we had brought in variable pay, we had reduced incentives, all kinds of things. But employees had lost trust in leadership, which meant they weren't making eye contact with the leaders. And then, of course, Professor Ghoshal was able to say at that time, he said, but last year when I came, and the time before I came, it was happening. And that was a lead indicator, a red herring. So, but I must have the courage to sit there and listen to it.
We suggested that they should have the corporate priest. And those corporate priests should not be from within, they can be also from outside. Because when you see things from a distance, you can see things much more clearly. And I always give the example of sweeper in my house. I learned something from him. He will sweep the house and he will stand somewhere, floor. So I asked one day a question, Matru, I find that when you sweep there and you stand there, what do you see? He said, sir, when I stand from there, I can see whether things were swept well or not. So that's why I said that walk to the balcony. Why I say walk to the balcony? Have developed some kind of stroking, that. Yeah. Even your subordinate says that, come and stroke my back. Okay, and you also stroke their back. So that's why in India, in America, corporate priest is very common. So in the Indian culture, I am talking about what? Have corporate gurus. When we gave the feedback to DuPont of Pandharpur, myself, he said, that is what precisely my wife has been saying. But I never cared to listen to her. Now I am very careful. I will listen to her that how right she was. Because many times you find that बोलते हैं घर का जोगी जोगड़ा आन गाम का सिद्ध. You must have seen. A Brahmin is never respected in his own village. But if some fellow comes from outside, he is respected. So that's why I always tell Hema and Kamal that you find that when you have got American professors, you listen to them very carefully because they are the white-skinned fellows and they are from America. Okay. So
I don't want to. I met somebody who was really upset. It was a leadership development program of a very big multinational. And it was an Indian multinational. And the chairman said, I want to see the leader. And the leader was an Indian lady of the team that was developing. And he said, I want an American to lead this initiative. And the team was very upset. The lady was, of course, quite upset. And the initiative didn't go anywhere. But she is lauded the world over in that space. But the Indian chairman, and it's a real life story. So you know how, like to his point, you really may not, I don't know whether it's a case of ghar ki murgi dal.
You look for the best talents, that.
Yeah.
You don't look for the places. I was in Wharton, last year I was in Wharton. So there is one Amin fellow, he is known as a leadership guru in Wharton. So he asked me that, can I sit in your class? I said, sure you can sit in my class. After that he said, my whole leadership theory has changed after this meeting. I am making only one point, go for the best, always. And that's why he said, do your shopping well. Whether you are going to Michigan, or you are going to Harvard, or you are going to Stanford, you must know that who are the best in this field here. Who are the best field in Booth School of Management? For example, in finance, Booth School of Management can be a great school. So that's why it's part. And I would like to make only one point. Please remember this one. When you are sending someone in your leadership training campus, make sure that you are sending the best one. Otherwise, don't do it. I say stop it. Because they would be doing much more damage than doing the great thing for the company.
So I've seen another thing that worked quite well. And it worked for us at Infosys, but you know, it didn't have the spirit, it didn't carry on. Program management there failed. That anybody who went for a workshop like this, one of the KPIs was you had to come back. So say you've done this, you have to go back. You have to sit with the leadership development team and you have to craft a training program for the next level of leaders. So say I was a tier 1 leader, I went for a program to Harvard or Wharton or whatever, I understood it. So I was not just understanding it for my sake, I was understanding it to disseminate as well. I came back, then I sat with my leadership development team, I crafted it to real life work situation and ran a 2-day workshop for tier 2 leaders. So see how it explodes. And what they say, no, if you listen, you do something. If you write, you do something. If you have to speak it or explain it or live it, you learn it so much better. So at the end of it, I had imbibed that concept, whatever one area I picked up, and gone back and done it. And actually 20 or 25 others who had signed up for that particular program also benefited from that indirectly. So these are all different ways to bring it into life.
I remember what Hema said. Before Hema, I also made the statement. There can't be learning organization without teaching organization. So when he wrote the book, Learning Organization, I wrote a piece comment that one thing you missed very badly in your book, teaching. So can we have those who are the doers, can they also become teachers? And remember that, that's why Hemaji, someone asked a question to Janaka, who is a great king? And the reply of the Janaka was, no king can be a great king without being a great philosopher. So you can't be a good leader without being a good teacher. Then you can't build people, and your job is also to build. Job is not to achieve only targets. The job is also to achieve, to build people. And very, yes.
Ma'am, in your presentation, you have given a very good example where you are talking of giving some numbers to the competency, and when we are talking on telephone, so these competencies will going to come up. So these, I just wanted to know more about it, like these are the numbers given by the employees themselves or how?
No, for example, you all know MBTI, Myers-Briggs. Assume Myers-Briggs had some numbers to it. So I am an INTJ, you're an ENTJ, somebody is an ISFJ, whatever it is. Just take. Now make numbers to that. So say when you internal phone, if Hema Ravichandra ENTJ, you INTJ. So we are both aligned on 3 dimensions. One, we will be different. So when you speak, you will be speaking from an I dimension. When I speak, I will be. It's not speak, it's how we relate. And that's the only thing that they were doing. But they were also saying that we are transparent. We will teach everybody. And remember, there are differences and diversity is what we thrive in. So I was coaching a person in that group who actually is a senior leader, but on strategy was 2. But all the peers, direct reports to her boss, were 5 or 4 on strategy. So she was a little concerned that, you know, she's a 2. But the strength of the leader came in helping her get that courage, saying, I want a 2 also in my group. Because I want somebody who is more relational, not just strategic. Because we'll all be thinking like, you know, we'll be clones.
Remember one thing that what Hema is saying, Kennedy regime, the whole decision quality was examined. And among all the presidents, the quality of the decision taken by Kennedy regime was the average. not excellent. Do you know why? Robert McNamara, Dean Rusk, Robert Kennedy, and Bob Kennedy, all four were having identical persona. So what am I saying? Please remember that. Organization may some people can be INTJ, some people can be something. So when you are creating a team to build the organization, there should be diversity and there should be mixture. So please don't forget about that. So this was also, if I am the boss, if I am the chairman, I am creating a task team, the moment that is on my mobile, I will say, aha, Bhatia would be complementary team member here. So she was using in that sense, you know that. But you find that it requires tremendous amount of open culture where people are also prepared to give their whole persona to be known.
Not having a lot of hidden areas.
Yes.
So, in fact, yeah, it's very, very important to be open about the whole thing. And
Yes.
I
Das
want to
is from ONGC, so I will have to say that Das is from ONGC.
I want to refer to your third module, which says that a model championed by one CEO is quietly buried by another. I think, as we discussed already, this is a very common phenomena in any organization. So how to basically to deal with these challenges, because this involves the level of CEO. So what the other leaders will do regarding this issue?
I feel that the important thing is to have a thought leader leading the initiative, not just a yes man or a senior person. A, because he or she knows why. Second, if it is already in the DNA of the organization, there is a method by which the next level will also be able to convince the senior leader that he or she will stand to lose if this initiative goes awry. So the commitment must be at the next level as well. It should be collective commitment.
What she said, don't do upward delegation. Now, please try to understand कि भाई सारा developmental काम जो है CEO का है, if that fellow is not committed, what can I do? Because many times people say, sir, what can be done here? And I will give one example. Rajan George, he was just a manager in Bayer India. And he came to administrative college for a program. And I was the program director. And Hemaji, you'd be surprised to know, for about 5 years, Dr. Bhandarkar and myself, we did the annual workshops for the entire top team. It was Rajan George who brought the culture of training in Bayer. And he was just a manager. So please, commitment of the top team is important. But persuading top team, you are because persuasion of subordinate becomes much more easier. But your talent lies in terms of persuading and selling some idea to the top team. Please understand. If you do it, you've got a great future.
You probably don't face it, but multinational organizations have another challenge. So say there is a group, large group, take any of them, Mahindra Group, GE Group, etc. Now, each group company will have its own MD and will it have its own HR head. At the group level, there will also be a group chairman and his HR head. Now, why should this HR head report, hear or listen to that HR head if there's no reporting relationship? Okay? He'll say, okay, take the Tatas for example. Say Padmanabhan. He's a great mind, Paddy, who's now the HR head. Why would a Tata Steel HR head, who's also a big person, listen to Paddy? Unless Paddy is able to convince the Tata Steel MD of his thought leadership. And Paddy is able to get the Tata Steel MD to pick up the phone and speak to him on any HR issues which require counsel. The moment he has established that relationship with the MD, his HR head will automatically come and listen to him as well. And how would have established that? Thought leadership. So thought leadership is a critical, we cannot wish away the importance for seminal, deep domain concept knowledge. And you augment it with been there, done that, it's a great combination. You know, to your earlier point, you know, about the differences and diversity, I always have this statement when I talk about diversity. Everybody today wants diversity. Diversity. But you know what leaders want? They want people who may look different, but think like me. And that's the biggest challenge. But if you have this 4325, 2435, they're all thinking different, right? Because finally, diversity is just a statistic. It's the mindset of inclusivity that you need. And by encouraging this, you're encouraging inclusivity.
That's why what Hema is saying, he says, Jivantu me satrugana sadaiva. Oh Lord, let my enemies live 1,000 and 1,000 years. We have prayed for the friends, but not for the enemies. The next line is what? Jada jada me brikati labhanti, tada tada mam pratibodhayanti. The moment they find any fault in me, they make me aware.
They make me
aware. So please understand that those who are the critical fellows, those who may not think yes and yes all the time, they are the great friends. But unfortunately, what Hemad is saying, that they are not in your coterie. They are left outside of the coterie. That's why I will tell you very interesting. When Julius Caesar became king, he threw out all the doppelgangers, chamchas. So coterie means chamcha, that what he was saying. They should be identical in terms of my thinking. So he was thrown out of the kitchen cabinet. But he wanted to re-enter in the kitchen cabinet. So one day when Julius Caesar gave the party, he was also invited. And he went with a glass of beer in his hand and he said, Sir, I have seen kings and kings and emperors and emperors. Sir, I have seen kings and kings and emperors and emperors. I haven't seen a king like you who doesn't believe in flattery. And Julius Caesar was flattered, and next day he became the member of the kitchen cabinet. So be aware about these flatterers. Diversity is important. Somebody should question you. But many people say, who will question the king? When I say either he should question or he should have someone to question. So that's what he's saying there.
I also believe that strong leaders create teams with a lot of creative tension. And, you know, I used to head HR. Mr. Mohan Das Pai used to head finance. It was well known in the organization that we had our own differences. But I was protecting employee stakeholder interests. He was protecting investor stakeholder interests. We are not running a country club. We may have greatest respect for each other, but the perspectives we are protecting or working on are different and distinct. Which is why I say if the HR head and the finance head are close friends, I'm worried for that company. You need creative tension because they are looking at different stakeholder interests. And that is the diversity you will bring into play.
But this is one thing that I must say, that we may disagree, but still we must have courage to agree. You know, my two professors, John F. Neal, who couldn't get Nobel Prize, so he was my teacher, and another person was Donald Wood, my teacher. And they were both my PhD dissertations. So when I used to meet John F. Neal, he would say, oh, that idiot, why you are spending your time, Peter? You are unnecessary, I don't know who planted you to choose this fellow. I go to Donald Wood, he will say all the four latest language about John F. Neal. But both were working on the fourth book together. So I asked a question, that you don't like each other, and it's known actually in business school, you don't like each other, but how come you are working on the fourth book? He said, well, Pritam, that is your persona, but that is your business. Can you see it or not? You may not like a person, but for business, can join together. It requires tremendous amount of courage to be involved at that level. I may not like you, I may not be your great friend, but I can be a great co-worker. So that is what she's talking about herself and Pai. Because I also know Pai is a highly self-organized person, even man. I know Pai very well.
But brilliant number man.
Yes,
Brilliant strategic mind.
yes.
So I should bring the relational piece, and he should bring the strategic number piece, right? Then only the company really. But if both, it's a country club then.
Boards are country clubs. Please
No,
understand.
shouldn't be, shouldn't be. With
I
board
think
effectiveness, you should not
Prasanna
have.
Chandra was talking something about, in my experience with 50 boards, I see at least about 90% boards are the country clubs.
And I think there also, leadership development and the chairman's role, especially the lead director's role and the nominations and REM committee chairman's role is very, very important. And now the Companies Act 2013 has given a very strong framework for us to leverage this and do this well, if again done in spirit and not in letter. Because you can do peer feedback, you can do 360 feedback, you can do all of those, and actually you should have courage to receive that. You should be able to give the team the trust that it is given in a trusting and open and developmental dimension, and that it is in spirit and not in letter. But you can do all of this. The Act has given that right. I sit on 3 or 4 boards. I chair the REM committee. And it is very interesting. If we can really give it in spirit. But the chairman has a big role to play. The environment and the culture of the board has a big role to play. And the NRC chair should play a fair and objective role. Or the lead director, whoever.
In fact, he is the more, he or she, the most important person, board committee. Remuneration and the HR committee. I mean, people don't give due weightage to the role of remuneration and HR committee, but that is the most important committee. Because they ask, at least to know that wherever I have been moved, I have been asking some stupid questions. If you appointed him as the top management, MD, he should come half a day and brief us with what kind of vision he has come, what he will do, and so on and so forth. That is going to be what really Hema is saying.
And again in the Companies Act 2013, the KMP, that is the key management personnel, which is the MDs, the CFOs, and the company secretary, and the SMP, which is one level below the MD, their selection, their promotion, their compensation, and their development is the mandate of the board through the recommendation of the NRC. So in spirit, again, if you do it, you're able to really take charge of leadership development.
You know, Dhananjay is his big boss, so he has come and
Told us all that we have to shut up.
No, I mean, he has got tremendous respect for you.
I know. I also have. Actually, both of them have really keep me on my toes.
He told me that both the distinguished guests and speakers have come. So
Our
he said
apologies.
that. So can we, before I request Negi, can we give actually Hema a very standing ovation? Negi is a HR, general manager in the ONGC, so he is proposing vote of thanks. Okay, Negi.
Ma'am, before start of the program, we have done 3 to 4 minutes exercise in a group, in a pair. And probably the objective was to make this post-lunch session lively. But during that 3 to 4 minutes time, you walk from this place to that place, and you could connect with each one of us. That exhibits you are truly, truly a HR professional. Indeed, we are very happy that you made this post-lunch session so lively, and you have given a new meaning and dimension to entire leadership development program. I, on behalf of the entire group and on behalf of all of them, extend my sincere gratitude and thanks for giving the HR perspective with regards to leadership development program. Thank you very much. May I now invite Komal Singh ji to present a small memento for and on behalf of NHRD to be presented to ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And may I now invite all of you to for a group photograph. Thank you, ma'am.
I think this is mine. Which one is mine?
As a defense technologist, as to what innovation meant to my community, so to say, as we went along. In fact, when this topic was given to me, I was running here and there, I didn't apply my mind. So just about 2 days back, I sat down and wondered what I should be talking about. And then when I thought about this innovation, certain stray thoughts occurred to me, and I thought I will share them with you before I get into my look at innovation as applicable to, as seen by a defense technologist, and in the context of the particular organization and laboratories and the projects I worked on. When I do that, I will move to the DRDO, the projects and things like that, and some highlighting here and there or flagging here and there, this appealed to me, that appealed to me type of a thing. May mean something to you, may not mean anything to you, and because you all come from different backgrounds and you have your own perspectives. But I will lay them down and then of course wrap up with a conclusion. So it's a fairly brief exposure. Actually, when this innovation business started bothering me, I thought, okay, I have to put my, I actually told Professor Pritam Singh, I have to organize my thoughts. He said, what is there to organize? You just start talking, it will flow. But notwithstanding that, I did try to introspect about this particular term called innovation and things like that. Then I realized that I have been reading my newspapers and magazines and things like that. And the occurrence of the term innovation is so often these days, it has almost become a fashion. But if you really look at it, you find that people are using that word innovation at about amazingly different things in different contexts. So I really wonder whether the academics in this area have to go back to the drawing board and then promulgate a fresh definition or what. In particular, for a long time we have been talking about innovation in the context of innovative product. And the moment you talk about innovation, innovative product, everybody says, for example, iPhone, iPad, and if you want an innovative company, okay, Apple. So I think there is a little bit of branding, hype, and so many things also going into that. And today, or yesterday's paper, it says that Bengaluru is number 2 in innovative city in Asia or somewhere. Now there is an innovative city also. How the city became innovative, I'm not very clear. It houses a lot of innovative people. Does it have a lot of innovation centers? And by that same token, why are innovation centers? Why are they called that? Just because you set up a building, put a board and give some money, it becomes an innovation center? It looks a little funny to me that it is something like there was a fashion to call every other academic entity Center for Excellence. The only excellence is the nice little board they have got in front of them. Excellence must have come by doing your job. Others must say it is excellent. Not that we declare that we are Center of Excellence. So I'm a little puzzled by that. To me, it looks, rather than products, people, city, as a technology fellow, I would be interested in the process which led to a successful realization. It could be a developmental process, a production process. It could even be aspects of management. Then this innovation does make sense to me. And then you can even take a call whether this particular ideas of innovation which have been articulated in particular context or lessons to be learned can be reused elsewhere, or it is applicable in that context, not applicable in this context. At least you can take a rational thing. Just by branding and sloganizing, I don't think we are really achieving much from that. Innovation is important and intuitively we feel, but I think a lot more can come to the table. So ultimately, innovation is all about practical implementation. By that logic, all processes that help in this translation of idea to product, idea to solution, such that it is useful to some user or user community, I think they are all candidates for innovation. Incidentally, I will use the term user very frequently, which most of you in your context may be calling customer. In the defense side, we call the defense services. The DRDO call the defense services users. So somehow that comes naturally to us. So this is something which I was wondering about. Then I was wondering, where does this innovation really start making its presence felt, so to say? Obviously, it is in the context of some product realization, solution, and things like that, implementation. But the context becomes very critical when there are problems to solve. There are challenges to overcome in particular that realization which you are trying to do. So I was thinking that if your necessity is the mother of invention, equally necessity is the mother of innovation. Unless there is a necessity, there is a burning concern, your shoe is pinching, that concept of innovation doesn't really make sense. The other thing which occurred to me when I was just doing this random contemplation, so to say, that very often we recognize innovation as innovation when there is success. When there something is, let us say that iPad is a very innovative product. When you do that, what we mean is iPad has been damn successful, and it looks a little different from others, the way it was put together, so there is some innovation about it. What about the things which failed? I personally feel that attempts at innovation in the course of realization of some product, some system, some solution, which ultimately failed, would be also very rich as far as drawing lessons, and maybe those particular things didn't work in that particular context. It may be a fantastic idea in a little different context. But we hardly get to know much about the innovations which failed. I feel it's a great loss. As I said, these are all random thoughts, not even connected together, but I thought I will lay them across. Now I will get into the real business. So I talked about my being predominantly from a DRDO background, DRDO being Defense Research and Development Organization. And before I talk about some perceptions related to innovation which I happen to encounter, first I should give the background related to what is this DRDO for some of you who may not have looked at it. It's actually an organization encompassing as many as 52 R&D laboratories. These laboratories are organized into clusters depending on the discipline or area, technology area they are predominantly concentrating on, like aeronautics, armaments, like that. Of course, one of them is electronics and computer systems, where I was very closely involved. And there are many others, missile strategic systems and all that. Now, there are some numbers here in the slide. I don't own them because I retired from DRDO. I have no access to authoritative figures about any of the internal details of DRDO. But I am just quoting from a paper written, IDSA paper written by one Mr. Behra. So, as per that, which I agree more or less is this order, there are as many as 7,000 plus scientists, engineers, who are the actual R&D contributors in DRDO, in a total strength of about 27,000 plus. Over time, for its very working out of necessity, DRDO has been creating a large ecosystem around itself, particularly in terms of industry, both large and small, private sector, public sector, as well as academic institutions. And the numbers he has given, and I believe it is not very far off the mark, are 800 various industries and over 100 academic and S&T institutions are part of an ecosystem for R&D, which DRDO has organized around itself. The R&D expenditure of DRDO per annum is of the order of 10,000 crores, which comes to about 5% of the entire defense expenditure. Including all the weapon systems, ammunition, rations, everything. And it also amounts to about of the order of 0.1% or less of the GDP of the country. Incidentally, it is a pity that India spends less than 1% of GDP on R&D. It is one of the lowest among the leading countries of the world. I think somebody has to put his mind to this and do something about it. Otherwise, all this talk about self-reliance, indigenous technology in this and that and things like that is only lip service. R&D is the key. Okay, now this is the DRDO. And one particular point I would like to flag when we are talking about innovation is, please understand that most of the systems developed by DRDO are the first of its kind in the country. May not be in the world, first of its kind in the country. So when you do a thing like that, particularly in the early years, 70s, 80s, and early 90s, and things like that, the technology base in the country was absolutely poor. So when you talk about development of usable systems, you have no choice but to bring in a lot of innovation. Also, concurrent technology development, because there is no technology base on which to do your development, which you can draw upon and then put them together type. So this is a huge challenge. You take, for example, the much talked about the missiles and the LCAs or the aircrafts and things like that. That fighter aircraft, first of its kind. Practically, we started from first principles. A battle tank, the first set of missiles. And also the area which I am going to refer to a little later, an area called C4I system, command, control, communication, computer, intelligence systems. Big name, but we will come to that, not all that this thing. But the point is, whenever we do this first of its kind type of a thing, first of its kind, as I said, as far as the country is concerned, within the context of the resources available in terms of technology, industrial capability and all that, I think one is forced to do a whole lot of innovation as you go along. This is equally applicable even if it is not first in the time in the country, when there is a crisis. When we had our Pokhran test and a whole lot of embargoes were put and we were practically excommunicated, we are exactly in the same thing that we have to innovate to keep moving. Later systems, for example, you have done one batch of system, let's say radars or one class of missiles. Later ones also require innovation, but they are more of a incremental in nature. The first are the toughest. I would like to briefly say that DRDO, where I spent bulk of my career, I started as a designer straight from college, and then over time moved on, and I was given the responsibility to lead a major project called Artillery Combat Command and Control System, or ACCCS, which I will touch upon a little later. And then I moved to an even bigger project called Command Information Decision Support System. Then I served as Associate Director of a major R&D lab called Electronics Radar Development Establishment, LRD for short, right here in Bengaluru. And then I took over Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, another laboratory as a director, and then finally moved to DRDO as Chief Controller R&D, in charge of all electronics and computer science related laboratories, about a dozen in number. So many of my experience related to innovation is primarily in this context. I will give some 2-3 examples before I conclude. I also had the opportunity, as somebody read out the biodata and all that, to be an advisor to Bharat Electronics. Essentially, On the technology aspects, and in particular, I concentrated on a very nice innovation they have created called a Central Research Laboratory, which is a little arm's length from the production facilities, production-related R&D. It is essentially to look at little futuristic technologies. So I loved that. So I spent some time with them, and then what I found they lacked was some sort of a high-level appreciation of matters about military systems and things like that. I was able to advise on that. And in the subsequently, I moved across to the board as independent director. And there were some aspects related to innovation which I had started when I was in DRDO. DRDO ultimately is an R&D organization, has ultimately to dovetail into some production agency. And in my area of electronics, computer science, invariably it is Bharat Electronics. So when I went on the board there, I was able to do a matching, some sort of a pulling related to some of the initiatives which I had taken when I was in DRDO, and then moved across. More recently, I have been actively involved with Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, particularly in relation to their cyber security. They have got programs for funding R&D programs, huge program, and I help them in project selection, reviews, and things like that, and also help them in various aspects of policy matters. Now, as I underlined here, there are ACCCS, AIDSS. These are the two test cases I will take to give an insight about. I have taken this as opposed to missiles, LCA, and things like that because I have directly worked in these areas. ACCCS, the full form is Artillery Combat Command and Control System. I think this terminology itself, I think I will briefly explain. The artillery here, the full name is actually Field Artillery, relates to a particular branch of the Indian Army which deals with long-range guns as opposed to these rifles and all that where you aim and shoot. These are long-range guns. You don't see the target and you have to hit, and ranges from a couple of kilometers to a couple of tens of kilometers targets which are